I come home, it's a Friday afternoon, I'm catching up, and Michael, all of a sudden, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the lights go off in my office. And we get brownouts in Texas and blackouts and, power outages. I thought, well, let me go check the neighbor. I go over to the neighbor, all their lights are on. Well, I at least have enough of a mechanical background to know that it's not a power surge. My accountant didn't pay the bill. I looked at that and we were $1 million in debt.
Welcome to the Builder Straight Talk podcast with your host, Michael Creasa. Get the unfiltered truth from the trenches of construction, real estate, and funding. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.
When it comes to home construction, many builders think that sacrifice is like a badge of honor. The early mornings, the late nights, the family meals that they miss, the kids' sporting events. I mean, there's so many things that they give up in exchange for building the perfect house that their clients will cherish. And you know what? That's part of the job. I totally get it. But the problem is in the background, they're missing the flashing lights that are saying, hey, danger, Will Robinson, there's problems here in the company. And in essence, what they've done is they've built a job for themselves and they haven't built a scalable business. My guest this week is Brent Garrett, and he's an entrepreneur, author, speaker, and business owner. And he's experienced the rewards and the sacrifices that come with being an entrepreneur, just like you. And he's built companies, sold companies, and he's come within inches of losing it all. And he's learned that building a successful business requires a different type of skill set than building a great product. So in this conversation, some of the things that we talked about: financial warning signs that builders often miss, how culture shapes growth, why sales solves more problems than most builders realize, and what it takes to build a company that doesn't depend on you, and so much more. And speaking of so much more, pretty please, with the click of your mouse, hit subscribe, like, and share to the podcast. It's the only way we can get this through the algorithms so more builders like you can experience what we're doing here at Builder Straight Talk. So pretty please, it's a simple click of the mouse. Subscribe, like, and share. And without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Brent Garrett. I know you're going to enjoy it. Brent Garrett, my friend, I want to say I'm excited to have you on the call today. Well, I just did say, so I guess I am excited to have you on the call today. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks, Michael. It's great to be here and I'm looking forward to it.
Now, you're a guy that brings so many different perspectives to this conversation. As you know, the overarching theme for me is what is it that we can share in our time together that spec builders, on large, can implement and bring it into their business and do something. And you and I were in the pre-call talking about Covey, I think. And I think it's Covey's quote that said, an idea unimplemented is a worthless idea. So I'm hoping from what we talk about today that our builder listeners can actually take what you've offered them and implement that into their business. That's my pledge to them today.
Well, that's my goal too. And I think Covey also said to know and not do is to not know at all.
These guys
So,
were so far ahead of
oh
the
my
time,
gosh, yeah.
And it's kind of funny, just reminiscing here. I'm looking up at my bookcase here, and How to Influence Friends. I think is that the one up there, and that would have
Carnegie.
been Carnegie.
Yeah.
And stuff back then, kids are discovering it today like it's found treasure. You
It's
know,
funny that you say that. Both of my kids, now 26 and 29, we had a little deal where they earned their money and they learned a lot of to buy their first car, and they learned a lot about cars. But we didn't pull the trigger until both of them read that book, and there was actually How to Win Friends and Influence
eh,
People, and I think it was written for teenagers, and I think both of them, the 3 C's, don't criticize, condemn, or complain. And they say it to me all the time, so we sounds like we read some of the same books.
well, I gotta guess that you're in Texas because if I heard this correctly, you actually made your kids work to buy their own car. What's all that
Absolutely.
about, man?
Well, they had 2 choices. Both of them ended up being college athletes. They had a choice at 6th grade. They could be in sports or some extracurricular activity, or they could come to the office and work until 5 o'clock because they weren't gonna go home and watch TV. And so they both chose sports. I was a college athlete as well, and we paid a certain amount for B's. We actually paid for C's, B's, and A's, okay? And then we would match what they made. And whatever they had, by the time they got to 16, they would be able to go and find their car. And, everything was a lesson on that. Hey, I want you to go look, and they'd tell me what car. I said, okay, I want you to go and find out what that one is new. 1 year old, 2 year old, 3 year old, 4 year old. And then how much is the insurance on that car? And anything you save on what you have, you can spend on gas, or you'll have to figure out how to spend your gas. They came back and said, Dad, did you know buying a car is a ripoff? Do you know how much that thing depreciates after the second, third year? I said, no, tell me all about it. He goes, yeah, the insurance goes down too. I said, wow. Okay. So what kind of car you want to buy? Well, I can't afford a 1 or 2 year old car. And so both of them got cars that were like 70, 80,000 miles on it. They learned that on their own, right? It was a fun experience. I had no idea, Michael, we were going to talking about my kids and cars.
The nature of the beast, man. This will go where the winds take us. It's funny, something so basic as them understanding the value of money, because that's basically what you taught them, is going to be a life skill that will carry forward forever. And yet it's not taught in schools, like the basic, how do you balance a checkbook? Not that something like that exists, but helping kids understand the value of money versus just being enamored by the glow of their reflection on a phone.
Yeah, and I hope my kids never see my transcript from college. I was a first generation graduate and they both made really good grades. But we had other rules. My son's working on the other side of that wall. I had a 5-year rule that they couldn't come back into the family business. He was at PepsiCo for 5 years, but I wanted them to understand what it's like out there first because, hey, we're going to get into some scrapes. We're going to talk. This is business. We got to solve problems and it's going to get heated and emotional and that kind of thing. He's been with us for a couple months now. He worked when he was growing up, but I learned that actually from a business that I was in a partnership, and the closest I got to new construction because that company, we did, residential new construction and plumbing and air conditioning, so I learned a lot about the building side of the industry, but him going out and working for 5 years and coming back, he learned a lot of lessons out there, but the biggest one was, it's never gonna be as bad here as it is out there. And so, I'm excited. He's doing tremendous things in our company, bringing new ideas and perspectives and AI, and it's just a joy to work with him.
It's interesting. They have to go out and learn how bad it is out there before they can appreciate how good it is in here. Well, let's talk about you, my friend. Let's rewind the clock. And you've kind of tilted the hand a little bit here by how you're influencing your kids. And when I was reading your bio, what I've noticed is many builders, when they're first introduced to the trades, it's because they have a parent, a relative, close friend of the family, something like that, who takes them onto the site and they get the bug, if you will. They first feel what it's like to hold a power tool, to drive, a forklift, whatever it is, but they're introduced somehow. In your case, you had a father that was in the trades, a plumber, I believe, but he went the other way around. He said, Sonny Jim, I don't want you into the trades. Like, tell me about that and what was the mindset behind that?
Yeah, my father had a full scholarship at the University of Missouri as a fullback and a punter, but he was in the National Guard when he was 17. Came from pretty humble background, and he got called up, went to the Korean War, and never went to college. Came back, started a family, worked in a hammer factory, was an apprentice. And it's funny, I say you get into the trades one of three ways. You either are born into it, you marry into it, or you had a buddy who needed a strong back and a weak mind, and you never got out of it. You got the bug, like you said. Well, I started on the end of a shovel at 12, and he started us there trying to convince us to never get in this business. My education background's accounting, marketing. He saw me my last semester in college and he said, what are you going to do? And I said, ultimately, I want to start my own plumbing and air conditioning business. I've seen my dad cry twice. Once when my grandfather died, and the other was when I told him that. He dried up real quick and went drill sergeant on me and said, why would you ever do this? Got so frustrated with me, went home. He said, I'll be back in 2 weeks. I want to talk about this again. He's from the Midwest, straight shooter. didn't mince words. And like, did I mention he was a drill sergeant? Yelling and screaming was just communicating for him. He came back and he said, "Look," he said, "I'm not gonna go into business with you." He said, "I don't have the money." And he said, "If you're gonna do this, do me a favor, make me this promise that you'll work for 2 years at one of these 3 companies. And if you can't survive in those 2 years, never start a business. Because if I had done this, I would have had a much better business." I said, "No problem." I said, "Tell me what it is." And, he said, "Northwestern Mutual, Mutual of New York, or New York Life." Guess what they all had in common? Straight commission, no guaranteed money, but he said, "You're gonna learn how to sell." And he said, "If you can't do it, then don't start a business." And so that was the best advice I ever got from him. I really enjoy selling life insurance. I am one of those weird guys that really did enjoy it. He was right. I went to work for New York Life. Their training was unbelievable. I can still tell you, Michael, people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan.
Yeah.
You got 2 problems. You're either gonna live too long or die too soon. If you allow me to help you, we're gonna fix both of those problems. How's that sound? That stuff just is in my head. And it was the best advice I ever got because sales covers a multitude of sins in business. And that's how I got in the business. I had 5,000 bucks, 50-page business plan, had a beat up Astro van, started it in Richardson, Texas, which is about 10 miles from here. Read Gerber's book and read everything I could get my hands on, was scared to death, and grew that into a company and sold it to Service Master, and then helped them do a roll up of the plumbing and air conditioning business, about a $500 million roll up. I did mergers and acquisitions, and that's where I got to. I don't know if they really bought my company, but they bought me because I knew the business and helped with the finance acquisition side.
How did you go? So you're in a discipline that couldn't be any further from working with your hands, unless you count, holding a pencil, working with your hands. So you're 2 years into that, 3 years into that. I take it you're doing relatively well. So in that whole time, in the back of your mind, are you thinking, I'm going to get back into trades. I'm going to get into the trades. Like, how did you make that transition? What was that spark, if you will?
I wanted to own my own business. I did not want to spend what looked like to me 10, 20, 30 years going down a corporate route with my life dependent on somebody else's favor and not upsetting people and not being able to after I sold life insurance, everything else that was W-2 looked like it was limiting. Okay. And what I learned, the difference in corporate and owning your own business is go to corporate. No offense. I mean, it's a great path. Look, being an entrepreneur is a life sentence if it's in your blood. Okay. But it's like being at the zoo. You get 3 meals a day, pat you on the head. Sometimes you get to bite back, but you can't go outside the cage. And in small business or being an entrepreneur or being a commission based person, getting paid for what it is you create or the value you create just seemed like a much fairer proposition to me. And what a great country to do that in. So when I looked at my dad's business, he's like, "Why would you do this?" Well, I had a completely different vision on what I was gonna do with the business. It was I looked at it like, "Hey, look, the competitive nature of who's entering in this business is going this way. Everybody else is going this corporate route out of college." And I saw it as a huge strategic advantage. Plus, I already knew the business because I grew up in it. And so I don't really think it mattered what the business was. It just seemed like a faster track because I already knew technically what to do. It was just a matter of sales and growing it, and it was always what I was going to do.
This sounds like it was more of a paid education for you.
Absolutely.
And then you took what you
100%.
learned and then you parlayed that into, like, I guess the undercurrent was you're always an entrepreneur. You realize that. And you and I suffer from the same affliction. There's never an opportunity too small. It's which opportunity do I take?
Well, I think entrepreneurs by nature, I might be a little wrong, they come in all different shapes and sizes, but they look at risk differently. And you mentioned education. Entrepreneurs, to their credit and to their detriment, look at a failure as an education or learning experience, and hopefully they learn from their experience and don't repeat them. Other people go through their entire life trying to not make a mistake. Hell, I've learned far more in my mistakes than I have in the successes. And many of the mistakes lead to future successes. One thing I want to say to your listeners, I have been inches from bankruptcy. I've been in debt up to my ears, and I've had commas by my net worth. And I will tell you, if you truly are in a small business or you're an entrepreneur and you're undercapitalized, you're going to deal with that quite often until you get yourself out of that hole. It is something we live with. And from my accounting standpoint, I will tell you, if I don't have cash flow problems, I don't have my cash working hard enough for me, is my theory now, right? So cash is something that the entrepreneur lives with always, or it's what puts them out of business.
Yeah. Or the access to capital, usually somebody else's.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Every small business owner has two problems that typically go unsolved until it's exposed to them, and that is liquidity. How do I get my cash and my net worth out of the business? And then the second thing is exit strategy, you know?
Pin that one for a second, exit strategy. I want to come back to that. The thing about capital, what I've discovered with many of the, let's say, smaller to mid-size builders, they'll have a stack of cash sitting there in the bank, and they're going to do a takedown. Either they're buying the land or they're going to do the vertical, whatever it is, they're going to bring their own money and put it into the game versus taking somebody else's, like working with a bank. And in their mind, they're saying, I'm not going to have to pay interest because I'm using my own money. But the part that they don't realize, that money is earning interest, it's safe, it's protected, it's doing something else. By taking that and investing it into your own business, which on paper sounds really reasonable, you're actually taking it out of circulation and you're tying it up. What's your philosophy on using your own money versus somebody else's?
Well, first thing is I would say is that insider trading is a federal crime except when you own your own business. And what better place to invest your money in than where you see it going and you know where it's what it can turn into and its potential. Entrepreneurs typically see risk as nothing more than an opportunity between where they are and where they need to be and a lot of hard work. I mean, it's exactly like putting a two by four down on the ground and saying walk across it, and you have no problem. Stick it 100 feet in the air, you quit worrying about what you have to do to walk across the board, and you start thinking about falling and dying, right? So when I say you said it's an affliction, we don't see risk. We see a lot of hard work between where we are and our goal. So as far as investing in my own business, there are these stages of business growth that starts at solopreneur, no matter what the business is, to what you and I have talked about, Gerber saying, own a business, don't own a job. The next step from owning a business is you've got freedom, you've got quality of life, and then you have to put your energy into strategy and legacy. And that's where what is the first rule of investing? The first rule of investing is once you are at a point, you diversify to minimize your risk. What's no different in your own business. Once you get to an income level that's throwing off an income that you can reinvest, sometimes it makes sense to put it and diversify it into something else. For me personally, I went with personal residences and rental property. It was close to me. I could watch it. It was very close to something I knew. And also, I developed a long-term hold on those properties. So over time, we grew equity in assets that the bank really liked. And now I've got collateral that can help me fund future ventures. I had at the time the pleasure. I played. I was a quarterback in college. 3 knee surgeries, and then I played golf because that was helping me pay for my school. Golf has always been a great business sport for me, and I ran into and played golf for a couple years with a gentleman named, and I don't like to be a name dropper, but Bob Dedman. Bob Dedman Sr. if you look him up, was the richest man in golf. And I got to spend 2 years every Monday playing golf with him. He and my mother and my wife are the only ones allowed to call me Brenty. He'd say, Brenty, he said, you know what the two most important things in business are? And I said, no, Mr. Devin, what is it? And he goes, OPB and OPM. And I had to ask him, but other people's brains and other people's money. If you have a good business concept, you can find the money that will invest. Okay. But we are in a business that throws off enough income that you can reinvest your earnings. We're in a great business. You're in a great business. I'm in a great business that we can actually take a portion of our income, reinvest it in things and get a return for it. So I'm not in the market much. I'm not in the securities much. Man, that information's trading so fast that by the time it gets to me, I'm not sure what's going on. I know what's going on. I can go stick my shovel in the ground at any of my rental properties. And that's one strategy, it's one example. But there are all kinds of things. There are 100 businesses inside your business. So once you get to own the business, you're not done there. It's time to reinvest, diversify, and build a legacy and figure out, how do I achieve liquidity and how and what is my exit strategy? Which, yeah, you have three things. I'm kind of rambling here, but you can you can sell. And man, I know in your space and mine, it is rabid on the equity side. I mean, people want our cash flow. Or you can sell to your employees, commonly called the ESOP, or family. Or you can just say, you know what? I'm done. Roll the door up and say, I'm done. I don't like that plan because I don't think you're getting paid what the business is worth. But moving from that, what I call messy middle, to owning a business should be the goal of every business owner.
It's kind of sad by default. The last option of rolling up the door and the business is kind of just spools away. It's because there was never any planning at the beginning. And again, leveraging Gerber, all you did was create a glorified job for yourself and maybe some employees, but it wasn't really a tangible asset that was positioned in a way that it had systems it could run without you, and ultimately it was scalable, but more desirable, it was saleable. And I think there's a formula or a strategy that has to come into play right from the get go. So let's use your business as an example. You were running a plumbing company, if I'm not mistaken.
Plumbing and air conditioning. I'm licensed in both trades, and I've always been a dual service contractor.
Okay,
One
so
is
let's rewind the clock. So here's Brent. There's your truck. It's probably a used one because you're going to take your own philosophy that you've taught your kids. So doodly do. You're driving around the city side. You're making repairs, putting in AC, whatever it is. At what point, number one, did you do your first scale? And by that I mean hire your first employee, second employee. At that point, when was it that you realized that this wasn't a job, I'm actually creating a career? And then the last one, I know I'm asking too many questions at once here, but the last question would be, as you were building this company, did you already have that mindset in place that I need to build this in such a way that I can step back and that somebody can buy this? Using, let's say, McDonald's as an example. People
Mhm.
used to recognize the clown with McDonald's, who's no longer there. That was the mascot, that was the icon. So if you didn't get the clown, you weren't really buying the company. They took the clown out of the equation. I'm not saying you're a clown, but ultimately your company had to remove you from it if it was going to be a tangible asset to sell.
So that's a lot to pack, but let's just handle the first one issue.
Well, I figure
I
if
have
I can give this to you now, I can go out for a beer and just come back in
I
like
have
15
I
minutes.
have clearly been called a clown before, Michael, so it's okay. It fits well sometimes. So the first company that I started at 26. And you're right, I didn't own a business, I owned a job. But we started scaling the business within 6 to 7 months, and we hired 2 employees, so it was 2 more trucks, and that's what I call moving from solopreneur to what I call the teaming phase. I always in the backdrop was leveraging technology to reduce our overheads, to get more money working for us and dropping more money to the bottom line. That was my first step in making sure we were able to reinvest back in the business for growth to get over that next phase. When we sold the first company, we were at about 10, 12 employees, and we were about 5 years old. We were about 1.5 million. And quite honestly, I was in that messy middle. I was making less at 1.5 million than I was at 800,000. And that's it doesn't matter what business it is. When that owner's hitting a ceiling of complexity and earnings start to drop, there are a couple of things that we can revisit in that conversation that's really easy to identify if you're in that messy middle or not. But what happened to me is I had the blessing of being aligned with a company that had their eye on me for a different reason. And I was starting to realize that my ceiling was I needed some corporate polish. I needed some organizational behavior experience. They came with to me and said, "Hey, we'll give you this," and it had commas on it. I started with 5 grand. My eyes got this big around and said, "Okay, I'm in," because I was already starting to answer the questions. I think I'm going to be stuck because I need more training. So that first business, I went from kind of a teaming to coaching the coaches phase, never really got to the owning a business in that first one, to moving into an executive position in a Fortune 300 company. You want to talk about getting dropped in the hot grease. I made a lot of mistakes and I brought a lot of clarity, and it was a great experience for me. I would say the second business is the one where we pushed through that. We got there quickly, and it was because of the experience I got at a Service Master. And their business unit was called ARS Rescue Rooter. We were about, I don't know, we were probably 800 million to about $1 billion company. That was the first big equity roll up. Some Fortune 300 companies were getting involved in our space. Started another one in '05. I would say we were at the coaching the coaches phase within 4 years. And then 2 years after that, hopefully I'm circling back and answering your question. That's when I realized, I said, you know what? My wife and I have a lifestyle business where we can be aligned with our goals for being and spending the time with our kids and the quality of life, still owning a small business, working like crazy, but we're working differently. Jenny and I are writing a second book right now called 30 Days to a Better Marriage That Works. She and I have worked over 20 years together. And let me tell you what, starting and owning a successful business is a piece of cake compared to doing it with your spouse. 1 plus 1 can equal 3, or 1 plus 1 can equal point 0.5. And it's not, I mean, what I would say is she was able to come in at 10, leave at 2, somebody was home. This has provided a great life for us. And I know you're going to ask me, but that's why I'm coaching people with small business. We have a lot of people coming in to this space. And gosh, it took me years to get there. I'd like to speed up the process for some that might be interested in getting there a little quicker. But I would say it was a fourth to sixth year. Now it's interesting. We talked about that. We wanted our kids to see us getting up early and going to work. We could have pulled a little bit back, pushed the accelerator and gone to a bigger, larger company, but we made a conscious choice to hold our growth so that we could do what we wanted to do for the next 10 years. Once our youngest child got into college, we had a conscious conversation. I said, Jenny, where are we going to take this business? She made it real clear to me that I would never retire because I'm not wired that way. But number two, I wasn't welcome home for that long. And so we grew the business. We doubled it in 2 years. And we're on our way. We're 17 trucks and about 5 million. We're on our way to 10 million over the next 3 to 5 years. Best business book I've ever read. And I love Gerber and Covey and the ones we've mentioned, but it's much simpler than that. I heard it somewhere between 3 and 5. And the key point of the book is slow and steady wins the race. And that's the tortoise and the hare. And that's the way we've always approached our business. So that's where we're headed. To answer your question, it's 4 to 6 years when you know what? We now have choices about where we want to steer this business, where we want to go. And I think your question, the bigger overarching question is when did you get to a point where you actually could make life choices that weren't driving you, you were driving them. Circumstances aren't driving you. You actually have control to a certain extent over your destiny.
I'm trying to connect the dots here because up till now, this sounds like a perfectly executed plan. It's almost like God came down from on high, wrote it down on tablets. Brent, go forth, my son, and prosper. There. I guess that's more Spock than God. But I've got to believe that there was a hiccup along the way. And again, I'm going to revert back to your bio. There was a moment in September of 2006 where the walls came crashing down. So up until this point, you've got this great business happening. You cashed out, you made money large. Instead of retiring on a beach somewhere, you reinvested it back into yourself, started growing another business. But what was this abyss that you were confronted with back in September?
Great question. It was in '06, and we started in '05. I had the great idea that I could start 2 businesses at the same time and being partially there in one of the most important businesses that had the most people. I was doing keynote speaking and workshop training primarily for a company called Train. They're an HVAC manufacturer, and I did kitchen table sales and that kind of thing. And at the time, I wasn't prepared ego-wise to handle that because there's some trappings around that. And up to this one event I'm gonna talk about, for the 3 or 4 months leading up to that, something was tugging at me that my personal choices for the important things, my belief system, my faith, and my family were being compromised, and I think the first time in my adult life that I had actually let that happen. So, my weeks were set up to where I was speaking and training Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and coming back to the office. I'd hired a team of people. I've done this before. It's piece of cake. Just throw some money at it and start a plumbing and air conditioning business. I come home. It's a Friday afternoon. I'm catching up, just looking at what the receipts are and looking at the bank accounts. And Michael, all of a sudden, around 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the lights go off in my office. And we get brownouts in Texas and blackouts and power outages. I thought, well, let me go check the neighbor. I go to the neighbor, all their lights are on. Well, I at least have enough of a mechanical background to know that it's not a power surge. My accountant didn't pay the bill. And I looked at that and we were $1 million in debt. And if I've given you any impression that I haven't been through rocky roads or impression, I I have, like I said, been inches from bankruptcy, and boy, was I close there and had great success. And hopefully not to those drastic extremes, but I'm telling you, there are good years and bad years in small business. It's a rocky road. I went home, took a stack home, went through that paperwork, had to sit down the next day and say, Jenny, we're in a hole. But we talked about something far more important. I said, hey, look, I don't know if I can save this. I don't know if we're going to bankrupt this business or not, but I think there's a way. But there's a much bigger question at play here. I want to get off the road. My kids are 4 and 6. I don't want to be a suitcase dad. This is what it's going to take. We're going to have to put our backs to each other and work our way out of this problem. Here's the thing I want to share with your listeners. What I learned was your belief system and your core concepts of how you want to live your life, you need to stay true to because that sets everything else in your life. But here were the 2 business problems that I took my eye off of that I never do for 1 second ever since. Number 1, you can delegate, but you have to own your financial health of your company. You take your eye off of that, it's your dashboard. Okay. That was the first mistake. The second one was I allowed a group of people to set the culture in my company that I didn't even believe in. And when I got involved, I was embarrassed to find out that's where we were. I'm happy to tell you how we bailed that out. I'll give you the kind of the pieces, but that's the biggest lesson I learned. But if I give you any kind of impression that it's just cookies and cream, man, I'm telling you, that's not why I'm an entrepreneur. I told you it's a life sentence. I go to work every day loving what I do. And what I do is I help groups of people work to a common cause, to a goal that improves and makes their life better. That's it. That's what I do. This is just a vehicle. I almost lost that opportunity in that business.
I'm scratching my head. Like you don't strike me as the kind of guy that would let things fall through the cracks, and that you would surround yourself with the right people to do the right job. So in this case, your accountant, he wasn't reporting to you, or you didn't care because you were too consumed by the other business, or you were just hoping he was doing his job. Like what was the disconnect there between the perceived reality that we're doing well and we've got money, and the truthful reality that shit, we're in trouble.
Well, first of all, I was in love with being out on the road speaking. There's some trappings there. The second was I didn't have an accountant. I had a accounting clerk because of my background. I didn't pay attention to it like I should have, but we can make stuff up in our head that's just not true. Oh, you know what? That's a receivable issue. That gap, we'll put a little more sales are off this month, this and that, whatever. And you know what? When you take your eye off of, I knew we had some cash problems, but we were in a startup. I was investing in a team, that kind of thing. It Let me tell you what, it doesn't jump out at you. Just because you have money in the bank doesn't mean you're making money. Okay. Just because you're ahead of the cash curve, but your balance sheet will tell you if you pay attention, if your current assets are in a position to be able to take care of your future obligations. And so that current ratio just got a little closer and closer. And I should have paid attention to it quicker. I mean, I think that's man, there's a lot of pride and embarrassment in that. And I think the message I'm trying to say is got an accounting background, had a successful business, sold one. Okay. But that business isn't going to drive itself. Okay. And if you're going to make it to the ownership side, you better really pay attention to those financials and you better pay attention to what your culture is. And our culture is do your best, do the right thing, treat people fairly. I learned that from a football coach. 4 rules today. It's on a laminated sheet. We show up on time. We do what we say we're going to do. We follow through. Say please and thank you. And, there's some relationship questions, but you have to set and live the culture so that they understand what the rules are. And the other thing is when people talk about scaling, you need to have that culture set early in the game because as new people come on, your speed in which you can onboard them to do things the way you do. You brought up McDonald's. I mean, hey man, the pickles go on a certain way. It's not 3 one time and 2 another and 1 another time. It's got to be consistent. And there's a process to it. And so I think yeah, it's even hard for me to admit today, but in my book, I start there because I want everybody to understand how fragile the culture and financials can be and how quickly it can happen if you don't pay attention. You start to dismiss and make excuses and you say things that aren't true about what's really happening around you. And that's the slippery slide.
Yeah, you got to know those numbers. The numbers are like the fuel in your tank. And if you're in a plane, you're very conscious of how much fuel you've got in the tank. Running the business is the same. When I think about your story, I think of Nicolas Cage, Billy Joel, Barry Manilow. What do those three have in common?
I'm going to guess they all went bankrupt.
They all had an accountant that they were relying on. At the end of the day, they discovered they had no money. The accountant did. They didn't.
Yeah, I think you can add Helen Reddy to that too.
Yeah,
But
there's no shortage. Yeah.
I think her husband got her that problem. She was his manager.
So, I mean, you're in Texas. You're no stranger to falling off the horse, dusting yourself off, and getting back in the saddle. Once you got things spooled up and going again, Is that kind of when you transitioned deeper into the coaching side and then you started putting your book together? Was that I don't wanna say
Great question.
incident because it's a life experience. Was that the genesis for the book?
No, so the book and me getting back into coaching, I just started I went to work on this 3 years ago. When I put my bags on the floor and really dove into the business, we turned it around pretty quick. And I'm gonna say, you wanna know how we turned it around? Sales. Sales covers a multitude of sins. And, so we grew out of that, we got in a stronger position. But I said to myself, I'm blessed with the ability to communicate and coach and then had great coaches and I love doing that. I like working with teams of people and helping people realize potential that I see in them before they see it in themselves. But the best way to do that is put that energy into your own kids and your family and the people around you first. And so I just started there and said, if I ever do this again, I'm not doing it just for money. And I knew that I would do it later in life. And I think I spent the next 20 years figuring out how and what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. And it's more principle centered, it's more vision based and mission based. But I started this book about 3 years ago and it was a blast to write. And I've got a 20-year plan that, this business is going to continue to move and it's got an exit strategy for me, but it's going to go on. But I'm going to spend the next 20 years working with folks who have a burning desire to grow and scale their business, but not compromise their values. Because the real message in this, I really appreciate you're one of the few people who have asked me, hey, how did you, being an accountant, get yourself in that kind of problem? You must be a real idiot. That's not be now I know why you're not an accountant. It's not the case. It just look, we can tell things to ourselves that just aren't true and we start believing it. But I'm gonna spend the next 20 years trying to help people not make some of the mistakes I made or make fewer and maybe only have to do it once, right? Try to speed up that curve because there are a lot of really hardworking folks. About 80% of our industry, I'm just speaking of mine right now, 80% of them run less than 1.5 million in revenue. I bet there's some similarities to all different industries. And of that, we're about $120 billion industry a year in residential service. They make up 80% of the group. 15% are doing more than 1.5 million, and they control 60% of that 120 billion. There's something that those 15% contractors are doing that the 80 aren't or refusing to do. My job is to try and help as many of these folks get over here as I can. And so that's how I got in the coaching business. I'm not doing, and I've got some other things that I'm working on. If I go to a city to do a workshop or training, there's some faith based things I'm doing at houses of faith to share about how you don't have to compromise your values or your belief system to be successful in business. And that's probably the stuff I'm talking about that's not money driven.
I wanna come back to the ceiling in a second. I wanna go back to so I'm not by any means calling you an idiot. I married
Oh, I said that.
Yeah,
I just said that, Michael.
yeah,
Hey, I was, maybe I'm not an idiot, but my behavior was idiotic. How's
yeah.
that?
What I was gonna say is I married wisely. My wife is an accountant. Her sister's an accountant, father's an accountant. So I married into money management. Yeah, so literally, I'm a 6-year-old that gets an allowance, and they make sure that I spend it well. So I can't point a finger at anybody. That's the situation that I'm in. To your point about being on the road, I know that all too well because for 10 years, I taught realtors how to get over the fear of using their phones. I'm too fat, I'm too ugly, anything with a two out front of it to do video marketing. And it was a wonderful career, and there's something about being on stage, and you can appreciate this, be in a room of 50 or 2,000. I think my biggest speaking gig was 3,000 people, and there's such an euphoric rush to this that you think you can walk on water, literally. And I remember the aha moment was at the end of a big event, everybody wants to come up, and I say, "Touch the Messiah's rope." because you're the rock star at that point. They all want to come up, they want to share their story, they want to touch you, and that can really go to your head. And for me, I brought my wife with me everywhere I went because that was my North Star. Because I knew no matter what happened, I'm never going to steer off course, but my North Star is right there. So,
Yeah.
getting back to your situation, and then I'll move on, but I want to ask you this because you've used purposely the word we a number of times. And then when the shit hit the fan, it's me. It's not we, it's me. I was pretty conscious of that. So I want to make that distinction. What was the effect on we, you and your wife, because she's with you through this? How does that make you feel when you realize, holy shit, like we're in a hole here, honey? How does that
My
affect
wife.
the dynamic? And that's got
Yeah.
to be more stress than I can write down on this piece of paper.
Yeah, man, I went home on that Friday. I poured over the papers thinking magically I'd find some nugget in there that would prove that I wasn't where I was. And about 2 o'clock, I went and laid in bed, couldn't go to sleep, stare at the ceiling. My first thought was, what am I going to tell Jenny? And I was just going to tell her the truth, number one. But my wife is the kindest person I know. She is my rock. And I have no idea what she thought walking away from that, but I sure didn't sense anything but support and belief. And I think she welcomed the decision to get off the road. And you and I both know, I don't want to speak for yourself. I don't want to speak for you. I want to speak for myself. At 61, what I really want people to know when they come up and touch the road is I'm just like you. In fact, I may not be as good as you. I just have been through enough stuff. I'm trying to share some authentic thoughts. You would hope that even though they do, you would hope that they would see you authentically and somebody who's broken, makes mistakes, but gets back up. And I think it's the people who have battle scars make the best coaches because they can relate and they can believe in people because they've learned how to believe themselves. My wife believes in me. And if you have that at home, 1 + 1 = 3. We're going to have to move on, or my voice is going to crack a little bit here. I want to, you just kind of touched a nerve, but there was never one bit of doubt. There wasn't a pullback in support. And we did do that together, but it was my fault that we were where we were. Just one step further on that. How do we work together and why does it work? I play offense, she plays defense, she watches the back door, and I drive the business. There are times when you have to create enough space. I should say, I have to create enough space for her to feel comfortable speaking her mind because we can sell and support our ideas so strongly that there's no room or air in the room to breathe. And hopefully, as I've gotten older, I don't have to be the smartest guy in the room. I got to get the smartest people in the room and shut up and listen. And, and that goes for my banker, my attorney, and my accountant. And it certainly goes for my life, my spouse and partner in life. So,
My editor, when he goes through this, is going to give me a slapping because I use this phrase all too often, but it's rough seas that make for good sailors. And if you've never experienced that turmoil, you've never put yourself to the test. You don't know what you're capable of in those times of despair. The fact that you've got your wife standing beside you, I learned the lesson the hard way. And before I go down that path, like the builders that are listening in right now, many builders, it is a husband and wife team, ma,
yep.
pa, shop. And even if the spouse isn't working directly in the business, she is directly impacted by the decisions that are made at the business. So, like it or not, she is your partner by default. When I used to be on stage, I would tell stories. So for me, the art of being able to teach somebody isn't spewing out a bunch of jargon. It's how can I craft a story that will pull them in and without them realizing it, they're in the story and they're actually learning something. That to me was just fascinating. And I used to weave my wife Diane into the stories that I told on stage. And I'd be doing full day workshops. So we'd have mid break in the morning, lunch, another break in the afternoon. At break time, people would go over to her and give her big hugs and say, "How do you put up with that man? How do you live with that man?" And everything I said was in jest, but they wanted to make a point of going over there to say hi because now she was crafted into the journey with me. And I found out, so many years later when I finally stopped speaking, that she hated every moment because she didn't want to be centered out. She didn't want people to know she was there. She just wanted to be in the background to make sure everything was working the way it should. Like left to my own devices, I'd be naked down at the river playing my banjo. And by definition, I think I'm an introvert, but a weird kind of introvert that I like people to an extent, but I like being with smaller groups, my friends the most. So
Sure.
getting up on stage was more like a therapy for me to get out of my shell. Like sitting here talking into this device and looking into a piece of glass, having a conversation with you. This is like therapy for me because I have to do this and I have to do it the best possible way that I can. And when she shared that, that was such a learning experience for me. And the way we've conducted our business always was there are certain things that I can do exceptionally well that she'll never be able to, nor does she have an interest to. And the other way around, there's things that she does, I can't even comprehend how she does it. And I'm just blessed that I don't have to. And I think you found that perfect mix in your marriage. But let me take this one step further because there's another thing that you said, there's a recurring theme here. And you've mentioned something about faith and being true to yourself. So, as all this is going on and you're staring into the abyss, and I know you've turned to your family, but was there a moment that you're actually turning to a higher power because you're thinking, like, man, I'm done?
Every day, every day. And in that moment, for sure. I'm not an evangelist, okay? I am a person of faith. I'm a Christian. But at my core is there's a natural law in this world. I believe that. And you can go back to Plato and Aristotle and 4000 BC and true today, and you can look this up and see the evolution of this thought that there's an order to the world. And there's the physical that we see, like gravity. And anybody that wants to, and they can choose to go against natural law, well, Michael and I want to watch you jump off that two-story building. And we want you to be able to fly, but we just haven't seen it happen yet. And so go for it. In that natural law and order, there's also things that we don't understand. When we start talking about light and physics and metaphysics, those types of things, I believe there's still an order to it. We just don't understand it. My job is not to figure out the mysteries of what I can't understand. It's for me to act on what I know to be true, like gravity. And so natural law says, whether it's your business, your life, or the people you interact with, that people who tend to do the right thing for all involved, those who try to find the best idea, not just their idea, the people who are doing the right thing, not transactional because if I do this, something good's going to happen to me. It's just I choose to live my life this way. Hey, you know what? Things have been okay. And when I try to go against natural law, or I choose the get rich quick, or, you know, a lot of the philosophers say when I choose evil, I just never can quite get a foothold and get there. It just good things don't happen. Now, over time, I might get rich quick. I might be lucky in the short term. Something might give me some kind of illusion that I'm headed in the right direction, but it always kind of doesn't end up right. And so in our business, I have always chosen natural law. And I believe in that. That's the way I go to market. We spend 4 to 6% of our total revenue on marketing. We have built our business off word of mouth and referral. Sure, we're in SEO and all the things we need to do, but There are companies in my industry spending 25 to 30% and charging what they have to do to cover that of their total revenue. And they just can't, yeah, well, I don't have any judgment about it, but they don't seem to be able to keep their customers. And if you're in a big 7 million population metropolitan area, you could probably make that work. If you're in Cuba, Illinois, where I grew up with 900 people, that'll last for a day because it'll be all around town, right? So, we just brought a small town approach in business to a large metropolitan area and it's worked. So, my faith is based in natural law and this understanding of grace. There's a gift that's been given to us freely, and we don't share it because we think something's going to happen for us just like natural law. We share it because we believe in it, and that's the way we believe we want to live our lives. And to try and pay back the giver of that grace is an insult to the giver. Can you imagine me giving you a Christmas gift and you spending the rest of your life trying to repay me for it? It was a gift. Enjoy it. That's it. The center, it's mine. It's like a snowflake. It's individually mine. It's the way I live my life. What I'm saying is going $1 million in debt and having idiotic behavior and realizing that I was going against natural law. Michael, if nothing comes from this podcast, I hope one person hears it saved my life. And that's my message about that moment.
Let's take that message, and I'm sure that's written throughout your book. So 30 Days to a Better Business, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken? Okay.
Yes.
So let's pretend that we're talking to the Brett of 2008, correct?
Yeah.
So if you had received that book 90 days, I'm going to give you a head start instead of 30 days, 90 days prior.
Okay.
And you got that book and you're going through this and you're going, hot diggity, there's some really good nuggets here that I should be applying. Give me a few of the points out of that book that would have made a difference to the Brett of 2008 September.
Yeah. Well, that book was written to tell that young man that, and it was written that way. It's 30 days of reading, about 1,200 a chapter, and it's broken into 5 weeks. First week is sales. Second week is leadership. Third week is business planning. And it's in a narrative style between Carl and Evan. Carl is a sage gentleman who owns a business, who meets Evan, who's a solopreneur. And I've had people ask me, "Hey, are you Evan? Are you Carl?" And I said, "I'm both." And that's, you just pegged without, I don't, whether you knew it or not, that's exactly how I wrote the book. I'm really instructing my younger self the things that I should have or would have done. It goes more textbook in week 4 and 5. 4 is about accounting. So if we count the weeks, yeah, I think I probably would have saved myself because if it's 90 days, then I would have gotten to week 4 on accounting and maybe what I could have maybe I had headed off a little bit, okay? But it's KPIs accounting. And then the 5th chapter is what are the common things or what do great companies have in common? They have a great client experience. They have a great sales and marketing process. They have a great finance, KPI, and accounting. You could say they have great numbers. They have a great culture that believes in a natural law or basis that is built on a strong foundation of core life principles. And you look in any business or corporation, it doesn't public, private, there's some thread of some kind of commitment to the team and the customer, and everybody's winning. And that's the book.
Where did they get the book, by the way,
Yeah, you can
Brett?
go to brentgarrett.com, or you can get an ebook, or you can buy the book from us. Currently, usually what I do is I connect with people. If you've heard anything on this podcast, is hey, I'd like to run a question or two by them. I already told you I'm not I, I'm in this and I have time to visit with people. If that conversation develops into something else, that's great. But if not, you're going to walk away from that conversation. I'm going to charge you a thing. I'm going to give you a couple ideas like I've shared with you. We might go a little deeper if you come to me and say, hey, man, I got a sales problem or I got a leadership problem or what's this culture thing? But when we're done, I'll send you a free e-book version of 30 Days to a Better Business.
Yeah.
I'm not writing a book to make a bunch of money. I'm writing a book to share my thoughts and share exactly what you said. What would I tell my younger self?
In the corresponding show notes, and for the listeners right now, realize that if you're watching this on YouTube or you're listening, make sure you look in the details section because there will be the show notes that will act as a basic summary, if you will. And any of the links that Brett has mentioned will be in the show notes. So you'll get access to him and the book. Man, we've been dancing for 60 minutes here, and I don't even think we've broken a sweat. Is there anything before I'm going to do a lane change here in a second to a part that I really like? It's called rapid fire. But before we go there, Brent, is there anything that I haven't touched on that you want to address? And you better say, yeah, there's a multitude, but is there any one particular thing?
The one that I would say that I think hits both your listeners and my lane is if you're getting close to thinking about retiring or you are thinking about selling your business, make sure that you know what you want to do in the future because you might be selling something that keeps you young and that you love to do. And if there's some aspect that the reason you want to sell is because you don't particularly want to do this aspect anymore, hey, stop and think about that and maybe come up with a strategy to where you get to do only what you love. And the reason I'm saying that is I'm 61 and I'm seeing some people in my circle hugely successful, much more so. I'm a part of the bottom half that makes their top half possible, if that gives you any idea, okay? They were really good at what they did, and they thought that they would retire and play golf, and they would finally get in the gym and get because they were traveling so much, and they would look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and they would have all this time. And what I find is what really causes folks in the latter part of their life to start a downward slide is lack of purpose. And when I sold my first business, I realized when I sold my business, I sold all my relationships. What I really cared about, what I love about my business is I get to come in here and play business every day. And this is I'm going to go ahead and say it's my ministry. I am connected to these folks and their life is better. And before you sell, consider that seriously and make sure, hey, if it's for you, that's great, but make sure you know what you're going to do next. If it's retire and play, there won't be enough golf. And unfortunately, I see some of these guys who are my friends, not all of them, they get in some habits that don't support their life goals. And I'm losing them quicker than I'd like to see. So there's one thought, a little negative, a little downer, but doesn't have to be, right?
We'll do a lane
You
change on
asked
that in a
me, so I
second.
and you
But
said, "Hey, look, we're gonna have fun, spitball it." That's there's private equity is everywhere right now. They are in love with our business. They want our cash flow. Don't give it up easily, and make sure you have a plan before you do that. So,
prior to the call, when you and I were having our meet and greet, you told me that, "Michael, I'm the kinda guy we'll talk for 30 seconds, and I'll wait for you to cue me up." So I'm gonna hold you to that. So right now, I'm gonna pull your feet to the coals.
okay,
Earlier, you said there are 5 things that you need to do before you sell. Now, what I'm gonna ask you to do before I let you out of the gate is I just want you to list them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, no explanation. Just give us those 5 things, and then in the show notes, people can reach out to you directly to get an expanded view of what
okay, I'm
you're
gonna try
trying to
and
put
do this
forth.
in 30 seconds, okay? This is like the flash round right
Hold on,
here.
I'm getting my timer ready to
Okay, here
go
we
here.
go. Okay, before you sell, make sure that you aren't responsible for running that business because they'll pay you more for your business if you're not critical to the business. So get to ownership. Don't be the cog in the wheel or the person that makes it all happen. So think who, not do, if you don't have that fixed. Hey, if you make sure that you're at margins that are at or above what the industry standards are, or they'll discount your business. Make sure that you have systems and processes in place that you can quickly scale your business. Think time box. You're going to have to look up Parkinson's law because I can't cover that in 5 seconds. Performance driven. Do you pay guys by the hour or by the production capacity of what you need to do, what you need them to do in space and time? And then the last thing is, how do you market your business? If you're not reinvesting 8 to 12%, then you're not proving to whoever's buying that how you have sustainable growth, because their ability to get their money back on what they pay you is 5 years later be in a different spot. That's the internal stuff. Four people you need on your team. And the first thing I'm going to tell you is you probably have an accountant, you have a banker, and you have an attorney. Add a financial services person to that if you don't already have one. And here's the last one. When you talk to your financial services person, get the best business broker you can, because the money they charge you, they will probably get you 2 or 3x the fee they charge than handling on your own. Private equity people do this every day. You do it once. Who do you think's better at it? I'm done.
Not bad, young man. Not bad for a 61-year-old. I'll give you that.
That was a minute and a half or two.
I'll
Sorry.
give you that. You know, you're getting a bit long in the tooth, but I'll give you that. But this is a good warm up for what I'm calling rapid fire. So this one, I'm really going to hold you to the fire. I'm going to give you a sentence. You just fill in the blank. No hesitation, no thinking. Just the first thing that comes into mind.
This sounds like fun. I'm ready. Go.
Ready? Okay. Small business owners get into trouble when
Rely on themselves and don't have a team.
the first warning sign that a business is drifting into trouble is
They take their eye off the financials.
a business owner becomes the bottleneck when
They think do, not who.
the companies that consistently win all have this one thing in common.
They get the right people on the bus, then they get them in the right seats.
A business becomes truly valuable when
It no longer needs the ownership and shareholders, and they're totally focused on strategy.
not bad. This one will be easier. This round is more personal. When you finally get that rare hour to yourself, what is it that you enjoy to do?
Man, I like to play golf, but I love to fly fish.
Okay. The place that helps me reset and gain clarity is
My quiet time every morning that used to be 6:30 and now it's 4:30 because I can't sleep past that.
well, I'll start calling you to make sure you sleep in. A book, a quote, or a movie quote that has left a lasting impression is
The Godfather.
give me the quote, man.
When you have bad news, bring it to me quick.
Nice, 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 nice. Once somebody truly gets to know me, they'd be surprised to learn that
Was a youth director for almost 4 years in a Methodist church.
I'm surprised. Last one. What a thoughtful gift. As I unwrapped the package to my delight, I found a
You stumped me. I'm not a gift guy. My wife would say I'm the hardest guy to buy a gift for because I just go get it if I
so
want
you
it.
prefer getting the empty box. I get it. Okay. Note to self. Send Brent
I am
empty.
so sorry. That was a complete fumble there. I am
Oh, no worries. Here's the opportunity to regain your
covered.
composure. Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And I'm going to tap into that Christian side that you mentioned. And this is something that I'm wishing doesn't happen for a long, 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 long time. But one morning you wake up and you're dead. And you're thinking, okay, well, it's not going to get worse than this, but I'm dead. And you realize that you're at St. Peter's Gate and you're in a lineup. And you kind of look down that line, you're thinking, hey, I know that guy. What the hell's he doing here? But as you're kind of perusing through that line, questioning why are they there, you look over and there's St. Peter and he's holding an iPad and he points right at you, Brett, and he says, come over here, young man. And you're standing beside him, and then you're looking over at his iPad and he's scrolling through all these little video vignettes. And then you realize this is your life story. He's basically reviewing your life story on the iPad. And he looks you right in the eye and says, Brett, I'm going to give you a gift that no one else has ever received before. I'm going to let you pick one. Pick one of these events and you can go back and change it. What would it be?
I would say in the 6th grade, I would like to go and apologize to somebody that I did something to that I regret this day.
Man, oh man, that's a curveball I did not see coming, my friend. I'm gonna have to say, like, we touched on so many different things. I feel like we're a bunch of bees in flight. We've come back to the hive covered in pollen, but we're not really covered in one distinct flavor because we've been to so many different fields. Yeah, that's a weird analogy. But anyway, I'm going to have to say to be continued because I think there's so much more here that we can get into, so much more positive mischief that you and I can uncover.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I've learned with you, you are an inch wide and a mile deep, my friend, and it's been a pleasure to be on your podcast. I hope we stay connected, and it would be a pleasure to visit with you. I feel like I've done a lot of podcasts, and this was the right balance of mission and margin, business and life, because they are connected.
Definitely. I'm like a bad penny, my friend. Once I'm in your pocket, I'm not going anywhere.
It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brent.
Thanks for listening to Builder Straight Talk. Make sure to like, comment, and share this episode on your favorite social media platform. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, available wherever you get your podcast streaming fix. Until next time, keep building smarter. This episode is made possible by our parent company, Sound Capital, funding built for builders.